Welcome back, collectors, and thanks for tuning in. Horror is a peculiar genre. It does not rely on spectacle, or grandeur, or even complexity. Its power lives in something far more fragile: familiarity, stillness, and atmosphere. Today's arrivals explore that idea from two very different and unique scales. One, a figure defined by psychological absence. The other, a symbol rooted in centuries of folklore and myth. We have the 1/10 Deluxe Michael Myers by Iron Studios and the life-size Halloween Part 2 Jock-O-Lantern by PCS. Together, they reconstruct something horror understands exceptionally well: unease. Now, let's get into it. Michael Myers is not written like a villain. He isn't driven by revenge, ideology, or transformation. He simply exists. An absence of motive becomes the motive, which is precisely why this character endures. You're not watching a man, you're watching inevitability. There's no theatrical costume logic here, no exaggerated comic styling, just the quiet terror of something that looks disturbingly ordinary. Iron Studios thrives in controlled realism. Their strength is restraint, clean anatomy, naturalistic posture, nothing exaggerated for spectacle. Everything's designed for believability. This piece captures Michael Myers exactly as intended, with stillness and weight. Conversely, the Jack-O-Lantern operates differently. This isn't a character, it's a symbol, a seasonal, ritual object that horror cinema weaponized. Warmth twisted into unease, familiarity turned uncanny. Where Myers is tension, the pumpkin becomes atmosphere. PCS's approach to horror from a different angle, not through character replication, but environmental immersion. This isn't decoration, it's a cinematic artifact, a physical anchor for the Halloween mythos. Diving into the unboxing, we have the art box for the 1/10 Michael Myers, very well illustrated with the exact image of the statue inside. The inclusion of the fallen officer adds a layer of narrative to this piece. It's a reminder that Michael Myers isn't portrayed as a theatrical villain. His presence is quiet, but devastatingly effective. The sculpt captures the weight and realism of the moment, reinforcing the idea that Myers operates with an almost emotionless inevitability. Even in a statue format, the storytelling here feels disturbingly grounded. At the center of the composition stands Myers himself. Iron Studios approaches the character with restraint, which is exactly what makes the figure effective. The posture is calm, almost casual, yet the mask and the iconic jumpsuit immediately signal the presence of something deeply unsettling. Myers has always been defined by stillness rather than spectacle, and this sculpt captures that philosophy perfectly. The base immediately establishes the scene. Iron Studios has recreated a quiet suburban street from Haddonfield, the kind of ordinary setting that made the original film so unsettling. The pavement texture, scattered leaves, and subtle environmental details ground the statue in a moment that feels frozen in time. Rather than an elaborate display base, it acts more like a stage, allowing the tension of the scene to unfold above it. Together, the base, officer, and figure create a complete horror vignette, one that captures the quiet dread that made the character legendary. And here we have the signature Comic Statues Unleashed 360-degree vantage point for both. The sculpt for Myers succeeds through subtlety. Fabric folds behave naturally, no dramatic wind effects, no forced motion, just gravity doing its work. The mask paint is where the unease lives. Soft transitions, muted tones, no artificial gloss screaming toy. It reads as worn, aged, and disturbingly plausible. This being the bonus edition includes the corpse of the cop associated with it. The Jack-O-Lantern prop. Scale becomes the craftsmanship. Surface texture is critical here. Too smooth and it looks artificial. Too exaggerated and it becomes theatrical. Instead, the finish lives in that perfect, minimal space. Stylized reality. Believable, yet cinematic still. The light-up feature on it as well is superb. The back of it actually has a Halloween image that glows through once it's turned on. And here we have the signature Comic Statues Unleashed. What makes this pairing fascinating is how differently they command space. Myers draws you inward. Details reward proximity. The pumpkin does the opposite. It shapes the room itself. One is observed while the other is experienced. So, my final collector's verdict? Well, some collectibles represent characters, and others represent eras. But the rarest pieces capture a feeling. Together, these don't just celebrate Halloween, they recreate its emotional architecture. And that's ultimately what great collecting becomes. Not ownership, but atmosphere. Michael Myers occupies a rare space in horror mythology. Most cinematic villains are constructed around motive, revenge, trauma, ideology, but Myers is defined by absence. He's not driven by anger, not fueled by hatred, not even animated by pleasure. Psychologically, Myers represents something deeply unsettling, a human form stripped of recognizable emotional architecture. No expressive dialogue, no psychological confession, no narrative justification, just behavior, which introduces the core terror of the character: randomness without chaos, violence without passion, presence without personality. He isn't a man behaving like a monster. He's a monster behaving like a man. That psychological void is precisely why Myers endures. He functions less as a character and more as a cinematic inevitability. Now we pivot into delicious atmospheric storytelling. Long before horror cinema adopted the Jack-O-Lantern, it carried mythological weight. The most widely cited origin traces back to Irish folklore, the legend of Stingy Jack, a trickster figure who repeatedly deceived the devil, condemned upon death to wander between the worlds. Denied entry into both heaven and hell, Jack was given only a burning coal, placed inside a hollowed turnip, an eternal lantern for an eternal exile. When the tradition migrated to North America, turnips became pumpkins, but the symbolism remained. A light meant not to welcome, but to warn. This is what makes the Jack-O-Lantern psychologically fascinating. It is warmth shaped like a face, comfort wearing expression, something familiar performing emotion, a smile that does not reassure. Horror has always relied on a delicate balance between presence and atmosphere. Michael Myers represents the presence, a quiet, relentless force that moves through the world with an almost unsettling calm. The Jack-O-Lantern represents the atmosphere, a symbol rooted in centuries of folklore that has become inseparable from the Halloween season. Together, these two pieces capture the spirit of the franchise in different ways. One embodies the character, the other embodies the feeling. And sometimes the most effective horror doesn't shout or chase. It simply waits in the shadows. Thanks for tuning in to this double-header of terror episode. I hope you enjoyed not only the unboxings and reviews, but also the psychological and historical breakdown of these infamous representations of Halloween. This video was not only a lot of fun to produce, but a welcome change from my typical acquisitions. As always, keep your passion for collecting alive and your love for superheroes soaring.